What's up, guys? My name is Tyler Belknap. I'm 21 years old. I race Pro 2 on a 2022 YZ250 FX. I'm 6 foot and weigh around 165 to 170. For the rankings of the bike, I put the Yamaha at first. I just feel really comfortable in the Yamaha. The Yamaha had a great feel. The Yamaha was a really good overall bike and could just handle every type of riding, whether it was tight single track, faster off-road, or the moto track. It was really good everywhere. The motor is just a calm stock motor, and I really liked how it could pick up when it needed to, but felt a little choked up, but I think with some mapping changes, it was able to change and able to open up a little bit and feel really good. One of my biggest struggles with the Yamaha was the seat, so we put a Guts Racing wing seat on it, tall seat, and it changed the bike completely. That is one of the biggest recommendations I would make if I were riding a Yamaha. We had TCS respring this and revalve it, and the bike changed completely and felt really good through, like I said, the big bumps. It was a little soft and could use a little bit more stiffening, but that's just a few clickers away and you can make it go right there. But as soon as we went off-road, it was really soft and plush the whole entire time. The bike felt really mellow and just smooth. It had great characteristics. It never felt over rigid. It felt like the bike had almost 100 hours on it with that smooth open feel, but it was still brand new and just felt like a tight chassis, but just a smooth chassis, a feeling that I just really enjoy on that bike. I love the Kawi. It's a really good bike, especially on the moto, but I just felt in the single track it struggled a little bit. It felt really like deflective off of the bumps and off of the rocks and stuff, just struggled a little bit in the smaller chatter and stuff, but as soon as you brought it out to a moto track, it shined, it cornered really well. We put a Pro Circuit full system pipe on there and had the ECU flashed by Precision Concepts, which opened up the motor a lot in a very good way, but it made it very revvy, a little bit more like a 250F, but it still had a little bit of bottom, not overbearing, not too much of a bottom. It liked to be rev a little bit more, and I think that's where it kind of struggled in the single track and tighter stuff too. The extra clamps and suspension done by TCS, I think helped the bike out a lot. It gave it a little bit, TCS made it a little bit stiffer and held up in the moto really well. The suspension held up really well in a lot of the bigger, faster bumps, but like I said, as soon as we went to the trail riding, the bike just felt a little uncomfortable to almost ride in there. The front tank kind of pushes out a little bit, and I didn't like that feeling when you're putting your foot out and it kind of pushes it out a little bit. It was just more of a comfort issue for me. Overall, the Kawi was a really solid bike, which is a little off for me. I usually am not a huge fan of Austrian bikes, but we started off in the trails in the morning and it just felt super planted and smooth through there. That motor is just super calm and mellow, picks up when it needs to, and is just really easy to ride. And this bike we put on an FMF full system, which I think helped a lot of that, bring up a lot of that power and give it a little extra boost of what it needed, whether it was the top, mid, or bottom. It just overall helped that bike on the moto track, on the trails, and on off-road. It just really opened up that motor. It's a really easy motor ride, especially on the moto track. It was one of the, similar to the Yamaha, it was a very smooth pull and never felt like I had to ride over aggressive, but it could ride aggressive if you wanted to. We had a set of extra clamps put on this bike along with the KYB conversion kit and the forks, which I think helped the front end a lot. We ran air forks at 1.2, but they were a little soft for me. I really enjoyed the KYB spring kit. It was a little stiff. The whole bike felt a little rigid, but not overbearingly rigid, so it gave it a stiff feel. It had a really well-balanced feel. As a taller rider, I'm at 6 foot, like I said. I felt this cockpit was really comfortable too for me. I felt like a lot of these cockpits tend to push me a little forward, but this bike felt really neutral with its bars and everything. And with the extra clamps, it changed it to 2024, which I thought would hurt its cornering, which it did struggle a little bit in the cornering, but it wasn't too bad. I really like the way the cockpit feels, like I said, where it's a very narrow front. It doesn't open up too much. It just is one consistent width, and I really like that feel, especially when you're cornering and trying to get your leg out. It doesn't throw your leg too far to the side. It just keeps it out, forward, and tucked. In fourth place, I put the Honda The Honda had a pretty comfortable cockpit. The only negative in the cockpit I would say would be, once again, the tank being a little bit wider on the shrouds and would just kind of push out a lot more than the other bikes and just made it really uncomfortable to try to turn on a moto track and in any of the tight sections where you had to put your leg out. We ran the Fastway dropper pegs and the Guts Racing tall seat at the beginning of the day, and I really enjoyed the tall seat because it gave it a little bit more plushness when you were sitting down and you didn't feel the subframe as much, which you felt with the stock seat. But it felt too much to have the tall seat and the lowered pegs to where it just felt like my legs were almost barely even bending. In the tighter, turnier trails, this bike really shined. Hondas are known for turning really well, and I felt that's where it shined, was when you're just standing up and going through a lot of the tighter trails where it would get a little more tight and you'd have to turn sharp and stuff. This bike really shined in that area. We put a Recluse auto clutch into this bike, and it felt like it really helped on the trails, just not having to focus on if your bike was going to die when you were just trying to lug it in fourth gear. You could just shift up and not worry about pulling the clutch, and made it super easy to ride in those tight trails. I felt to struggle with it a little bit in the moto, as I like a little bit of engine braking when I'm riding more of a moto track to help me with cornering, but it just made you kind of have a more fluid corner to where you had a lot more rolling speed. It was just something you had to get used to. All the bikes are really good and super close. It just depends on rider and size, and this is just my opinion on how the day was and the track was and the riding we did today.